The skies above Earth shimmered with the unmistakable glint of approaching warships. They hung like silver daggers against the vastness of space, their formations tight and precise. Admiral Caratha's fleet had arrived, their purpose unmistakable. But Earth's defenders were not idle. Along the orbital pathways, dozens of Earth Defense Fleet warships waited, engines thrumming with the promise of violence. Captain Evelyn Reyes stood in the command center of the flagship Resolute, her gaze fixed on the tactical display before her. Markers representing the Saran fleet moved steadily toward Earth, their numbers vast. But Reyes had anticipated this moment, had prepared her forces for the inevitable confrontation. The last transmission had been sent, the die cast. Now all that remained was to endure the storm. Admiral Caratha's forces have entered our outer defense perimeter, Lieutenant Harper reported, her voice cool and composed despite the tension filling the air. Estimated time to engagement, 15 minutes. Deploy the first wave of interceptors. Reyes ordered. Focus fire on their flanking vessels. If we can disrupt their formation, we may force them to break rank. Harper relayed the orders, her fingers dancing across the console with precision. Reyes admired her efficiency, even as her own thoughts raced. The Resolute's crew was disciplined, its officers skilled. But skill alone would not be enough to repel an onslaught of this magnitude. She glanced at the screen, her mind replaying the message she had sent out to the galaxy. It had been an act of desperation, a final attempt to warn their enemies of the consequences of continuing the war. But as the Saran fleet bore down upon them, it was clear that words alone had not been enough. The first volleys erupted from Earth's defenses, brilliant streaks of energy lancing through the darkness. The Saran vessels responded in kind, their own weapons blazing with ferocious intensity. Ships danced and twisted in a deadly ballet, their shields flickering as they absorbed blow after blow. Reyes watched the battle unfold, her eyes scanning for patterns, weaknesses, anything she could exploit. She had spent years preparing for this moment, but the reality of it was more chaotic than any simulation. Ships exploded in flashes of orange and white, debris spinning away from the conflict like shrapnel from a shattered blade. "Captain, we've lost the Dawnbreaker," Harper reported, her voice strained. Their forward batteries were overwhelmed. Reyes clenched her fists, forcing herself to remain calm. Every loss was a wound, but there was no time to grieve. Redirect the vanguard to cover the eastern flank. We can't allow them to encircle us. The orders went out, but Reyes knew the truth. They were fighting a losing battle. Even with the enhancements they had managed to implement from the alien relic, their forces were stretched thin. The Saran had brought overwhelming firepower, and their strategy was brutally efficient. Yet, amidst the chaos, Reyes caught sight of something unexpected. A small cluster of ships emerging from the shadows of a nearby asteroid field. They bore the markings of Kane's rogue colonies, their hulls scarred and patched, but unmistakably functional. "They're helping us?" Harper's astonishment was evident, her eyes wide as the rogue ships fired upon the Saran flank, their surprise assault catching the enemy off guard. "Kane always did like to make a dramatic entrance," Reyes muttered, a faint smile breaking through her otherwise grim expression. "Open a channel." The screen flickered to life, revealing Kane's familiar, weathered face. His eyes gleamed with a cunning that Reyes had once admired and feared in equal measure. "I figured you could use a hand," Kane said, his voice rich with amusement. "Couldn't let the Saran have all the fun." "Don't mistake this for forgiveness," Reyes replied, her tone icy. "But if you want to fight, then fight. We're not turning anyone away." "Good to know." Kane's grin widened. "Try not to get yourself killed before we've settled our differences." The channel cut out, and Reyes couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Kane's arrival had shifted the balance, however briefly. His ships tore through the Saran ranks with reckless abandon, their pilots fighting with the ferocity of those who had long been denied a place to call home. But even with Kane's forces bolstering Earth's defenses, the battle remained perilous. The Saran fleet was relentless, their tactics evolving with every passing moment. Ships on both sides were torn apart, their shattered remains tumbling into the atmosphere below. It was then that Reyes noticed something unusual. A single ship breaking away from the Saran formation, its sleek, angular hull painted in shades of silver and black. Unlike the others, it moved with deliberate grace, avoiding the chaos of battle as if guided by something other than mere strategy. "Harper, focus our sensors on that ship," Reyes ordered. Her curiosity piqued. "I want to know who's piloting it." Moments later, the readings appeared on the screen. Reyes's eyes widened. The ship was emitting an unfamiliar energy signature, one that bore striking similarities to the alien Relics technology. Whatever it was not standard Saran design. Before she could process the implications, the mysterious ship unleashed a beam of energy that cut through the battlefield with surgical precision. Earth's ships scrambled to evade, but the blast had not been aimed at them. Instead, it struck the Saran flagship Adraxia, carving through its shields and hull like paper. Reyes watched in astonishment as the Adraxia's engine sputtered, its structure beginning to crumble under the force of the attack. Whatever weapon the rogue ship possessed, it was unlike anything she had ever seen. "Admiral Caratha's flagship it's disabled," Harper stammered, disbelief coloring her words. "Their formation is breaking." Reyes seized the moment. "All ships, press the attack. Target their command vessels. Now's our chance." The battle turned, Earth's forces and Kane's rogues coordinating their efforts with newfound vigor. The Saran fleet, shaken by the loss of their flagship, faltered. Ships retreated, their assault reduced to disorganized skirmishes. But Reyes's gaze remained fixed on a strange vessel. Its presence had saved them, but its motives remained unclear. And as the enemy retreated, the ship vanished into the darkness, its trail leaving only questions. "Find out everything you can about that ship," Reyes instructed Harper, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. "I need to know who's out there, and what they want." The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. Reyes knew better than to trust in miracles. And as the echoes of combat faded, she felt a chill settle over her. The transmission had been sent to the stars, and something had answered. What concerned her most was not that the mysterious ship had intervened. It was a question of why. The aftermath of the battle left a scarred sky above Earth, fragments of shattered vessels drifting like metallic ghosts against the deep black. Victory had been claimed, but the price was steep. Earth's defense fleet had been decimated, its strength reduced to fractured remnants clinging to survival. Yet the Saran fleet's retreat had given them a precious reprieve, one Reyes intended to exploit. The Resolute's command center was a hive of activity, officers barking orders as they scrambled to restore damaged systems. Reyes stood in the center of the chaos, her presence a stabilizing force. The battle had left her weary, but she forced herself to remain focused. This was not the time for rest. "Kane's forces are holding the outer perimeter," Harper reported, her voice steady despite the exhaustion lining her features. "They've managed to chase off the last of the stragglers. For now." The Saran appeared to be in full retreat. "Good," Reyes replied, her gaze never leaving the tactical display. "But we can't assume it's over. They'll regroup, and when they return, they'll come with a vengeance." The truth of her words weighed heavily on the room. The Saran were not known for their mercy. Caratha's brutal efficiency was infamous throughout the galaxy, yet the destruction of his flagship had shattered his aura of invincibility. The question now was how he would respond. Reyes's thoughts drifted to the mysterious vessel that had intervened at the battle's climax. Its appearance had been sudden, its power undeniable. She had spent hours combing through sensor logs, analyzing the energy signature it had unleashed upon the Adraxia. But every inquiry led to more questions. "Any luck identifying that ship?" Reyes asked, her voice sharp with urgency. Harper shook her head. "The readings are inconsistent. Whatever technology they're using, it's unlike anything we've encountered. Even the relics we studied don't match the pattern." Reyes frowned, her fingers drumming against the console. The alien relics Earth had uncovered over the years were powerful, their mysteries slowly unraveling through painstaking research. But this ship's capabilities were beyond anything they had managed to replicate. "Keep digging," Reyes said. "I want every available resource focused on finding out who or what we're dealing with." Harper nodded, her determination mirroring Reyes's own. The The crew continued their efforts, their work punctuated by the hum of damaged systems struggling to regain functionality. Reyes allowed herself a brief moment of respite, her gaze shifting to the viewport where Earth hung like a wounded jewel amidst the ruins of battle. The door to the command center hissed open, and Kane strode in with the confidence of a man who had spent his life defying the odds. His arrival drew more than a few wary glances from the crew, but Reyes remained impassive. "Didn't think you'd still be alive," Kane remarked, his tone a mixture of amusement and grudging respect. "You underestimate my stubbornness," Reyes replied, her gaze cool. "Though I'll admit, your intervention was timely." Kane's grin widened. "Timely, huh? I like to think of it as inspired. Can't have a Saran wiping out the last remnants of Earth before I've had my chance to twist a knife myself." "Save your bluster," Reyes shot back. "You didn't come here just to gloat. What do you want?" Kane's expression grew serious, his eyes narrowing as he approached. "I want answers. That ship, whatever it was, tore through Caratha's fleet like it was made of paper. I've seen power before, but nothing like that. And something tells me you know more than you're letting on." Reyes stiffened, her suspicion confirmed. Kane had noticed the same anomalies she had. His curiosity was dangerous, but perhaps also useful. "I'm not sure what it was," Reyes admitted, her tone carefully measured. "But it wasn't ours. Whatever technology they're using, it's beyond anything we've developed." Kane's gaze sharpened, his mind already dissecting the implications. "You think it's related to the relics?" "It has to be," Reyes replied. "The energy signature. It's similar, but more refined. Like someone has taken what we've been trying to understand and perfected it." Kane's silence spoke volumes. His ambitions had always been driven by pragmatism, by the desire to build something lasting from the scraps left behind by Earth's failures. But even he could not ignore the potential power such technology represented. "If someone's out there with that kind of firepower," Kane said slowly, "then the Saran aren't our only problem." Reyes nodded. "Exactly. And until we figure out who they are and what they want, we're fighting blind." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden transmission alert. Harper's fingers flew over the console, her eyes widening as she read the incoming data. "Captain, we're receiving a message from the ship," Harper announced, her voice tight with astonishment. "It's directed to you specifically." Reyes's pulse quickened. "Put it through?" The screen flickered, resolving into an image of a woman seated within a sleek, minimalist command center. Her silver hair framed a face of calm authority, her gaze piercing yet measured. "This is Dr. Mara Voss," the woman said, her voice cool and precise. "I believe you've been trying to identify my vessel." Reyes exchanged a glance with Kane, their mutual shock evident. Mara Voss. The name was known to anyone familiar with Earth's scientific community. Brilliant, reclusive, and long believed to be working on some of the most advanced research projects Earth had ever conceived. "I thought you were dead," Reyes said, her voice steady despite her surprise. "A convenient misconception," Mara replied. "I have been pursuing knowledge beyond the reach of petty politics and military greed. But recent events have forced me to intervene." Kane's curiosity blazed. "You built that ship? You cracked the Relics code." "In a manner of speaking," Mara answered. "The Relics were never meant to be weapons, but their potential is vast, and I have merely unlocked a fraction of what they are capable of." Reyes leaned forward, her eyes locked on the screen. "Then why intervene now? What's your agenda?" Mara's expression remained unreadable. "To prevent annihilation. The Saran are relentless, but they are not the only threat. What I have uncovered suggests a far greater danger, one that could consume us all if left unchecked." Kane's skepticism was palpable. "And you expect us to just trust you?" "I expect you understand that our survival depends on cooperation," Mara replied. "If you want to live through what's coming, you will need me." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving a charged silence in its wake. Reyes stared at the blank screen, her mind spinning with possibilities. Mara's intervention had saved them, but her motives remained elusive. Kane broke the silence first. "Looks like your ghost just became very real." Reyes nodded, her resolve hardening. Whatever Mara had discovered, It was clear the war had only just begun, and Earth's only chance of surviving might rest in the hands of a woman who had spent years hiding from its reach. The transmission traveled through the blackness of space, its encrypted frequencies slicing through the void like a blade. It was meant to reach everyone. The Saran fleets, the rogue human colonies, even the distant mining outposts where loyalty to Earth had long since eroded. Yet as it spread, the reaction was not one of horror or reflection, but something far more dangerous, defiance. In the Saran flagship, the Adraxia, Admiral Kareth reviewed the message with a gaze sharp enough to cut steel. His skin, marbled with intricate patterns that shimmered under the sterile light of the command deck, betrayed his agitation. The human's arrogance had long been a thorn in his side, but this final act of defiance was more than mere rhetoric. It was a declaration that Earth still held enough strength to challenge the Saran Dominion. To Kareth, that was unacceptable. They think this will frighten us? Kareth growled, his voice deep and measured. A final attempt to save face before their inevitable fall. It is pathetic. Beside him, his lieutenant, Alara, studied the message with a more cautious eye. Younger than most of the high command, her strategic mind had earned her respect among her peers, though her instincts often ran counter to Kareth's brutal pragmatism. She was not convinced this transmission was born of weakness. There was a veiled promise within those words, a suggestion that Earth still possessed something to be feared. Their desperation is clear, Alara said, her tone calm but insistent. But desperation can be dangerous. A creature backed into a corner will often lash out with more ferocity than ever before. We should proceed carefully. Kareth laughed, a deep, rolling sound that echoed through the chamber. Carefully? They have nothing left. Earth is but a husk of what it once was. Let them spit their venom. We will answer with fire. Alara said nothing, though her mind raced with possibilities. The war had stretched for years, leaving devastation in its wake. She had witnessed Earth's stubborn resilience, their relentless drive to survive despite overwhelming odds. But it was not strength alone that troubled her. It was their ingenuity, the humans' ability to adapt, to transform even their darkest moments into fuel for something greater, was a factor Kareth often disregarded. Even so, she held her tongue. The Admiral's authority was absolute, his reputation forged through decades of ruthless conquest. To challenge him now would be to court her own death, and yet she could not shake the feeling that their enemy had yet to reveal its true hand. Far from the Saran fleet, on the outskirts of the human territories, another group received the transmission. The rogue colonies, once loyal to Earth but now fractured and self-reliant, viewed the message with mixed emotions. Some saw it as a desperate plea, others as a rallying call. To Commander Elias Kane, it was both. Kane had built his own empire from the ashes of Earth's neglect. Abandoned colonies, forgotten research stations, remnants of the diaspora, he had gathered them all under his banner, not out of loyalty to Earth, but out of a need for survival. The universe was vast and hostile, and Earth's wars had left countless people adrift. Kane provided them purpose, though his methods were often harsh and his ambitions ruthlessly practical. He replayed the transmission, the words reverberating through his command center. The faces of his crew reflected varying shades of doubt, fear, and grim determination. Kane's own expression remained unreadable. Earth has finally admitted its own failure, Kane said, his voice low and firm. But that doesn't mean they're beaten. If they've sent this warning, it's because they believe they still have something worth defending. Or they're bluffing, suggested Marcus, his second-in-command, trying to draw us back into their fold through guilt or intimidation. Kane's eyes narrowed. Perhaps, but we can't afford to ignore it. If Earth has developed new technology, something capable of turning the tide, we need to be prepared. He glanced at the tactical display, his mind already weaving possibilities. Earth's desperation was an opportunity. Whether to aid them or exploit their weakness, Kane hadn't yet decided, but he would not be caught off guard. As the message continued its journey across the galaxy, it found another audience, one far removed from the chaos of war. On a secluded research station orbiting the gas giant Helios 4, Dr. Marvos watched the transmission in stunned silence. Her work had always been rooted in discovery, in the pursuit of knowledge beyond the narrow boundaries of Earth's political squabbles. But even here, on this isolated outpost, the shadows of war loomed large. Mara had once been a prominent scientist within Earth's most advanced research initiative. But when her theories clashed with the military's desire for weaponization, she had been cast aside. Now, her brilliance was relegated to this distant station, surrounded by data and machines, but deprived of any meaningful connection to the world she once sought to protect. The message played on a loop, its cold declaration resonating within her like a wound. Mara recognized Captain Reyes's voice, the edge of bitterness and determination unmistakable. They had once been colleagues, allies in a project meant to unite rather than destroy. But those days were long gone. Her fingers trembled as she shut off the transmission, her mind already working through the implications. If Earth had sent this message, it meant they were preparing for something drastic. And if Reyes was involved, it would not be a bluff. Mara's knowledge of Earth's technology was still considerable, and if the rumors were true, that Earth had finally harnessed the alien relic's full potential, then the war was about to change in ways no one could predict. But Mara's concern was not just for the war itself. It was for the consequences of using such power, the potential devastation that could follow. She had seen what humanity was capable of when pushed to the brink. Whatever Earth planned, it would not end cleanly. Back on the Adraxia, Alara watched as the crew prepared for the next phase of their assault. Karatha's orders were clear: crush Earth's defenses before they could rally. But her thoughts kept returning to the transmission, to the warning that spoke of regret and consequence. For the first time, she wondered if perhaps the humans had more to offer than mere resistance. As the fleet prepared to jump to Earth's outer defenses, Alara felt the weight of her doubts settle upon her like a physical thing. But Karath was determined, his wrath unstoppable. And she, bound by duty and fear, could do nothing but follow his orders. The war was far from over, and as the pieces moved across the board, each faction clung to its own vision of victory. But victory, as Alara suspected, was a fleeting thing, and the transmission, though seemingly little more than a desperate act, had already begun to unravel everything they thought they understood.